In many ways, reading Putin's thoughts is a fool's errand, but can we learn something more fundamental about the deeper motivations driving the Kremlin's actions from its language and social dynamics? What do they reveal about its motivations, and how should we respond? It's tempting to think of Moscow's foreign policy as rational self-interest, a quest for spheres of influence defined in the sober logic of security and realism international relations, but the terminology also hints with something more interwoven with familial dynamics. Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. In this video, we will be talking all about the Ukraine war and why Putin is so obsessed with invading Ukraine. And before we start, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Done? Let's get started. Many analysts believe we are currently in the midst of the most dangerous global crisis in a generation. Russia has gathered a large military force at its border with Ukraine and has threatened to invade the country if its demands are not met. The impending fight would most certainly be Europe's greatest since WW2 or World War II, with unknown but disastrous effects for the continent as a whole. One man's inability to accept the Cold War's judgment and the smoldering animosity of modern Russia's degraded status on the global arena are at the heart of this dilemma. Vladimir Putin has made no secret of his intention to restore Russia's international status and correct perceived geopolitical injustices in the recent past. Throughout his political career, Putin's imperial ambitions have been shown in his growing public fixation with Ukraine, a country whose very existence has come to symbolize the Russian ruler's deepest fears and numerous historical grievances. Anyone who wants to make sense of the current issue must first comprehend Putin's infatuation with Ukraine. Fortunately, this duty has been made much easier by the publishing in summer 2021 of a 5,000-word treatise on the subject of Vladimir Putin himself. Putin's astonishing thesis titled "On the Historical Unity of Russians and Ukrainians" demonstrates his hatred for Ukrainian sovereignty, as well as his belief in the artificial character of the country's current separation from Russia, which he attributes to sinister outside influences. Putin, the amateur historian, declares emphatically that Ukrainians and Russians are one people, and concludes, "I am certain that full sovereignty of Ukraine can only be achieved through partnership with Russia." The Russian president's tract has undoubtedly increased international awareness of his fixation with Ukraine. Ben Wallace, the British defense minister, just authored his own article on the matter, drawing some alarming implications from his sober examination of Putin's own comments. President Putin's piece entirely disregards the views of Ukrainian citizens while conjuring the same type of ethno-nationalism that has played out across Europe for ages and has the potential to reawaken the same catastrophic forces of historical hatred. Wallace added, "Nonetheless, only a few Western politicians and policymakers appear to properly comprehend the scope and significance of Putin's Ukraine obsession." Putin has been preoccupied with Ukraine from his first year in office in 2000, according to Russian journalist Mikhail Zygar. The 2004 Orange Revolution, which Putin received as a personal humiliation when his ill-judged interference in Ukraine's presidential election sparked a pro-democracy rebellion, heightened his fixation. Following the Orange Revolution, Putin's entire attitude toward democratic world shifted. He blamed the West for inflaming and backing the protest movement in Ukraine, and he saw the revolution as a dress rehearsal for a similar revolt within Russia. Putin found the Russia Today TV channel and embarked on a new course of nationalistic conflict with the Western world within months, setting the seeds for today's hybrid war. Putin has seen the restoration of Ukraine to the Russian sphere of influence as his most critical priority since the Orange Revolution. This is the unfinished job he must complete if he is to leave a lasting legacy and be remembered as one of Russia's greatest rulers. Putin's unique form of Soviet nostalgia is mostly driven by a desire to rehabilitate the totalitarian past and legitimize the authoritarian present, as opposed to being nostalgic for the Soviet Union and wishing for the USSR. Putin despises Soviet leader Vladimir Lenin and frequently accuses him of fomenting today's Ukrainian troubles by instilling a distinct sense of Ukrainian identity and associating historically Russian regions with Soviet Ukraine. Putin's true inspiration is the ultra-nationalist Tsarist Empire, not the purportedly internationalist USSR. His rejection of Ukrainian statehood and rejections of a separate Ukrainian nation are deeply ingrained in the Tsarist history and closely resemble sentiments and practices against Ukraine during the Russian Empire's heyday. To completely comprehend Putin's Tsarist perspective, it's necessary to understand how his infamous April 2005 comment describing the fall of the Soviet Union as the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century was widely misread. It became a true drama for the Russian people, Putin added, qualifying his claim. Hundreds of millions of our citizens and countrymen have been forced to leave Russia. To put it another way, the collapse of the Soviet Union was a disaster for Russians because it left their country split and incomplete. In December 2021, Putin elaborated on this concept, describing the dissolution of the Soviet Union as the breakup of historical Russia under the guise of the Soviet Union. He added, "We changed into an entirely new country, and much of what had been built up over 1,000 years was lost." Ukraine was, in Putin's opinion, the greatest loss of all. Ukraine is home to the world's largest ethnic Russian community outside of Russia, with a population of over 40 million people. In terms of race, culture, history, and religion, it is likely the most similar of the former Soviet republics to Russia. Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, is regarded as the mother city of Russian history. When Putin laments the loss of the Soviet Empire and speaks of the injustices of the post-Soviet settlement, he is primarily thinking of Russian imperialism and Ukraine. Putin has never fully acknowledged Ukrainian independence and still sees Ukraine as just partially sovereign. He dismisses Ukrainian intelligence and prefers to attribute the current breakdown in bilateral relations to a mix of Ukrainian extremists and foreign meddling. The concept of Ukraine as a puppet state of the West has been a crucial Russian narrative in recent years. Despite mounting evidence to the contrary, Kremlin propagandists and government officials continue to claim that a quiet majority of Ukrainians secretly yearn for a return to Mother Russia. These foreign plot claims are a comfortable way to avoid facing the harsh reality that modern Ukraine has simply abandoned Russia in favor of Euro-Atlantic integration. They also hide Putin's anxiety that Ukraine's embrace of democracy could stoke calls for similar reforms in Russia. Putin is still haunted by the wave of pro-democracy protests that swept Eastern Europe in the late 1980s, ushering in the Soviet Union's demise. He sees Ukraine's emerging democracy as a direct threat to his own authoritarian rule, and he realizes that Ukraine's historical ties to Russia exacerbate the danger. Moscow had tried to pin the current crisis on purported NATO incursions into Russia's traditional sphere of influence over the years. While Russia has made a long list of security demands to the West, Russian authorities have made it obvious that isolating Ukraine from the democratic world is their top aim. Putin has maintained that increasing collaboration between NATO and Ukraine, even if Ukraine does not join the alliance, poses a direct security threat to Russia. This is incomprehensible. Ukraine has been conducting joint military drills with NATO member states without incident for nearly 3 decades, and neither NATO nor the US have any plans to deploy sophisticated missile systems capable of reaching Russia in Ukraine. Putin's goal to reintegrate Ukraine into Russian orbit is the true source of today's crisis. For the past 8 years, he has tried to persuade Ukraine to forsake its Euro-Atlantic objectives through a combination of direct military intervention, cyber strikes, disinformation operations, economic pressure, and coercive diplomacy. The failure of these attempts has led to the current standoff, with Russia now threatening military technical measures if it does not reclaim control of Ukraine. Putin's ultimate goal is for Ukraine to surrender and be absorbed into the Russian sphere of influence. His relentless pursuit of this goal has already ushered in a new Cold War around the world. It now has the potential to spark a huge armed confrontation in Europe's heartland. Nothing less than Ukraine's return to the Kremlin circle will satisfy Putin or relieve his concerns about the imperial inheritance's further disintegration. Did you find this video informative or helpful? Let us know in the comments section below. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on my future videos. Don't forget to like and share.